Hey, my name is Josh Walker. I'm one of the owners of Arete Investing. Today, we're going to talk about how to evaluate a syndicated deal. So, this is what I got more wrong than anything starting out. I assumed that I knew what I was doing, and I'm an engineer by trade. I like numbers, and man, I love looking at deals, and I would go straight to the numbers. There would be a pro forma that kind of explains how the sponsor thinks the deal is going to play out. What does the sponsor think your returns are going to look like on an annual basis? How does it build over time? What does it look like when they sell the asset? I would dig into that. I would pay a little bit of attention to the sponsor. What's their track record to some level, whatever they reported in the packet? I would go through that. I like it, looks legit, sponsor looks legit, let's go. And I would invest. And I went crazy with these things. And some of them turned out great, some of them didn't. And I started digging into why. And a whole lot of it, I just had completely backwards. And the biggest thing that I didn't understand and I didn't know was the golden rule of syndications. And that is that there is no such thing as a good deal with a bad sponsor. There are three questions that you should ask yourself in this order. Question number one, before you look at anything else, look at the sponsor and can you answer the question, are they good human beings? To know that, you have to get to know the sponsor. Remember, there are no good deals with a bad sponsor. The number two question is, do they know what they're doing? So some people they start with the sponsor, but they go straight to, do they know what they're doing? And the whole, are they good human beings? I get that that can sound a little cheesy, but there are so many times when you're completely dependent upon that sponsor that if that answer is no, a lot of people will just assume, well, as long as they can make me money, I don't care what they do outside of that. I don't care what kind of human being they are. I'll explain to you why that's flawed logic in a minute. So, are they good human beings? Do they know what they're doing? And the third question is it a good deal? That's the end. That's where I would start. That's where I went straight to, is it a good deal? I like the numbers. I'm digging through it. So if the answer to any of those questions is no, pass on it. And the reason you should do that is because of the silver rule of syndicated investing, which is there are always more deals. There are always more sponsors. Do not ever fall in love with a deal because that deal will never love you back. I have tried to get deals to love me back. It will not happen. The deals don't care. So let's talk about these three questions. Are they good human beings? So think of your relationship with the sponsor sort of as a marriage. These are pretty long deals. The average deal is probably 5 years on a multifamily syndicated deal. They can be anywhere from, typically, they're not shorter than 2 years, but some of them can be 10 years. So the thing with deals that are that long is the odds of something going a little sideways during that period of time are pretty high. And that's not something I didn't appreciate that near to the degree that I expected. So even when it's the greatest sponsor in the world, there are things that are just unforeseen. So I did a whole lot of deals 3, 4, 5 years ago, and almost all of those deals went through COVID. So during COVID, there were eviction moratoriums. So I'm invested in a ton of multifamily syndications. And now all of the sudden, I've got these deals out there in these apartment complexes, and tenants can now stay in these apartment complexes and not pay rent. And these sponsors cannot evict them, they cannot kick them out. So during this time, I am completely dependent upon that sponsor handling this the right way from every aspect. And when I say they need to be good human beings, it's because in situations like this, even to some of the most ethical people in the world, it is extremely tempting to tweak the rules and kind of lean towards self-preservation instead of looking out for your investors, looking out for your tenants, right? You want a sponsor who is there to serve their investors and to serve their tenants. So I needed them to treat the tenants legally and ethically. I needed them to treat the investors legally and ethically. So for us to move forward with a sponsor, we either have to have a substantial history with that sponsor. And when I say move forward, I mean to roll something out to our investors. We either have to have a substantial history with that sponsor through investing with them directly, or we have to have substantial history with somebody else who has a substantial history and can vouch for that sponsor. And even then, we'll do a deal with them. We'll make sure that things are going as they're supposed to go in the first few months of the deal. We'll make sure that their communication is the way it should be. There's just no substitute with having history with someone, but there are other things that you can do. There are other avenues that you should also, even if you have a history, even if you know them to some degree personally, you can learn a whole lot about people on Google. You can see if there are any lawsuits that they've ever been involved in. You can see if they've ever filed for bankruptcy, things like that, that might be at least a yellow flag. And if something pops up, don't hesitate to ask them about it. And if you're turned off by their explanation, move on. There are sponsors left and right. You can always find other deals, other sponsors, and other there's always other assets out there. So beyond that, talk to their past investors. Past investors are always willing to give you their feedback. We've been asked by people who are looking at deals what our experience is, and we have no reason to sugarcoat anything. We're not obligated to give these sponsors a great review or a horrible review. Nothing's incentivizing us to do anything other than be honest. Research their historic properties, so you can Google online and see, did they actually own these properties? Did they buy them for what they said they bought them for? Did they sell them for what they said they sold them for? Did their entities own them? Look at their social media. If it rubs you the wrong way, move on. And then just word of mouth. You can get on their forums like biggerpockets.com, where you can get on these forums and ask people. There's tons of people out there who invest in these deals. And it's actually a pretty tight knit, relatively small community. Once you start getting to know a few people, you're not very many degrees of separation removed from most of these sponsors. So that's the number one question: are they good human beings? Number two, do they know what they're doing? So look at their historic performance and ask for every single deal they've ever done. If they have their historic performance in the packet, talk to them. Make sure that they didn't leave anything out, and does it match up with the kind of pro forma that they're portraying that this deal represents. If this deal is significantly improved upon their historic performance, that's at least a yellow flag. Maybe there's a reason that this one's better than the rest. Maybe they changed something about how they're going to operate it, but that should at least be a yellow flag. And in their historic successes, and this can be a little difficult to decipher, but did they create this because of their inherent knowledge and ability, or was it just a crazy market and everyone was winning? You kind of want to see, do they outperform the market on a regular basis? Have them talk through past deals, specifically things that didn't go well. If they are a proven sponsor with a decent track record, they are going to have challenges that they should be able to talk you through. And they actually probably take a lot of pride in telling you how they worked through some of these issues. Can they explain? The next question I would ask them is, can they explain every single aspect of the deal? Have them just walk you through the pro forma. Have them walk you through that deal packet. Ask them what assumptions they're making. What cap rate are they assuming they're going to be able to sell these at? What's driving rent growth? What percentage are they planning on being able to increase the rent growth by? How are they going to handle their debt? All those kinds of things. Specifically debt, talk to them about the debt structure. Are they going to get fixed rate debt or variable rate debt? There's not necessarily that one that's right and one that's wrong, but talk to them about what's the long-term plan. If they've got a variable rate for 3 years and it should be below the market, but the deal is going to take 5 years, ask them what their plan is to either refi that debt, or how are they going to restructure that debt when it comes due, since that's planned to be before the end of the deal. And then how does this pro forma that you're looking at, kind of hit on this earlier, but how does it compare to historic deals? Have them walk you through why this deal might be a little bit different than some historic deals. Have they done this type of deal over and over and over and over, and they have a great history of success? That's generally a pretty good sign. So that's the second question. Do they know what they're doing? The third question is the deal. To me, this is the fun part, right? So before you look at the deal in great detail, looking at cap rates and rent growth and where it is and all that, look at it from a high level. Does it match the kind of deal that you are looking for? And what I mean by that is you need to know what you're looking for. Are you looking for high cash flow? Is this money? Are you trying to like exit your W 2 job? Is this money that you're planning on living off of? If it is, then that cash flow needs to happen. They need to be very, very certain of that cash flow. If you're just looking for a deal that's going to have the most growth over time and you don't really care what the early time cash flow is, then ask them about the upside. What's the true potential of the upside? Are they looking to 2x in a 3 to 5 year time span? That's pretty normal for a multifamily deal. But what's the real upside? Could this be a 3 or 4x? And maybe if it can, that's not something I would ever expect a sponsor to promise. But if it has that potential, maybe it's worth taking a hit on the front end on the cash flow side. So beyond that, what are the tax advantages? So do you have other income that you're looking to offset, other passive income that you're looking to offset with this deal? So, if it's a multifamily deal, talk to them about bonus depreciation, because you can get, in the first year that you get a K1, which is the tax document that you get every year for these deals. Ideally, it's very negative. So you have a massive loss on paper and you're getting paid in real life. That's an ideal deal, especially if you have other passive income to offset. And then another thing to think about is the velocity of money. And what I mean by that is how fast are you getting your initial investment back? Beyond that, um, what do you think about the asset type? Do you like it? Do you like the location? And think about building a portfolio. So maybe you have 3 multifamily deals and they're all in Dallas, Texas, and you're looking for the next deal. Maybe you love Dallas and you're going to do every single deal you ever do in Dallas. But with syndications, you can go wherever you want. You can invest in Atlanta, Georgia. You can invest Phoenix. You can go wherever. So take advantage of that ability to have that kind of diversification. So maybe the next thing that makes sense is to diversify into something like self storage. Or maybe you've done a lot of apartment complexes and you like multifamily, but you like the idea of mobile home parks, right? It's a little different spectrum and maybe a little heavier potentially on something like cash flow. Um, so if we keep going, how do they plan to add value to the asset, right? Is this more of an institutional deal? And what I mean by that is this something that's going to attract institutional capital? So things like REITs, real estate investment trusts, where they don't really care about cash flow. They're investing billions of dollars. And so they can take a 3, 4, 5% annual cash flow, where maybe that's not something you want to mess with, and you would rather have something that's more, we're going to buy it from a mom and pop, we're going to renovate the common areas, we're going to renovate the units as tenants move out and move back in, and then we're going to increase rent that way. So we're forcing appreciation. That's a typical value add deal. The other thing to look at is what's the sponsor's presence in the area. Is this their 8th deal in a 10 square mile radius? So maybe they have a property management company who's managing all these properties and it's got a history of success, and this is just rinse and repeat. Or maybe they've done a ton of deals in Austin, Texas, and this is the first one they're doing in Jacksonville, Florida. They've never done a deal in Jacksonville, Florida, but they're saying they can do it over and over. Talk through that with them and understand why they believe that they can replicate what they're doing in Austin, in Jacksonville, Florida. We hit on this a little bit earlier, but what does the debt structure look like? One hypothetical bad scenario is, let's say sponsors got 3-year fixed debt, 4% right now, right? We're in an 8, 9% kind of world. They're getting 3 years fixed at 4%. Sounds great. They plan to sell in year 3. So they've got 3 years fixed debt. They're going to sell it in year 3. So all the numbers look really good. It's going to cash flow really well because the debt is structured to where the interest rates are low. And let's say we get to year 3, market tanks. It does not make sense for them to sell. If they were to sell into whatever that environment looks like, we're assuming it's a bad market, then they are going to have to sell it at a discount and deliver a very poor rate of return to their investors. So at the same time, say rates have gone way up or just stayed where they are right now. So if they were to refi, they would have to refi into an 8 or 9% world. So they're going to go from 4% to 8 or 9%. And let's say that the asset cannot support that. That's a real scenario where the only refi option is something that the asset cannot support. So then they are forced to sell at a discount. And that is a bad scenario. So if they have that kind of a structure with some kind of fixed rate debt or variable rate debt that is going to expire, maybe there's a balloon payment in year 3 and it's a 5, 6, 7 year deal, have them walk you through what their plan is. They need a solid plan. And then talk to them about the term of the deal. What do they expect it to be? Are they very opportunistic? If if the market turns and it's an amazing market in 2 years, yes, we'll sell it, or yes, we'll refi it. Or are they dead set on, we're going to keep this thing for 10 years. We hope to refi it 2 or 3 times in that time frame. And maybe they're just a buy and hold kind of thing, and they're just going to deliver cash flow and refi. But talk to them about that. Make sure you completely understand that. We'll get way more into the details of evaluating cap rates and rent growth and sponsors' assumptions and some of the more specific things to watch out for in a later episode. But don't ever forget the golden rule of syndications. There is no such thing as a good deal with a bad sponsor.